Yeah, I mean, we had a really good conversation. Again, I have a tremendous amount of respect for him as a player and a person, and just had a very open and honest conversation. He was really appreciative and the consummate pro, as you would expect, and it was a really good conversation.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jorge.
Andrew, was there anything else? There was a lot of speculation today in the last just couple of days about you guys and Lance Lynn, for example. Just wondering if there was anything else close, whether you thought you had anything else done, and what else is sort of going on in the last maybe 24, 48 hours.
No, I mean, it's funny. 3 weeks ago, I kind of anticipated this to be a very different type of deadline, and it definitely didn't play out all that differently in terms of conversations. And, from our standpoint, we talked about this before the deadline. We feel really good about the team that we have and also the depth behind it. So our mindset was not to just do something to do something, and that we have guys on our 28-man roster who are deserving of playing time and didn't want to block that unless it was someone really impactful in terms of then spending the time. And so we had some of those conversations, nothing that ultimately got all that close. But again, we felt like we were operating from a position of strength in that, we've been fortunate from a health standpoint, that, we feel really good about not just our starting group, but really our entire roster and even some depth that is right now at USC.
Obviously, you guys have put yourselves in a position to, have an opportunity to look ahead to October, and it's going to be a strange, different, just a different postseason format, 3-game series to start. Just wondering if does this show that you have confidence in the Tony Gonsolin or Dustin May to be a Game 3 starter and to sort of take on that responsibility?
I'm not sure yet. Obviously, we've got Julio and Dustin and Tony and Alex Wood coming back, and I don't know exactly how things will play out, but I feel very confident that we're going to have an extremely talented pitching staff come October, and exactly how guys are deployed remains to be seen. But, similar to Walker in 2018, I mean, Dustin and Tony got some experience last year in the postseason, but we not only believe in their ability, but we also believe in them as competitors and feel good with them, helping us in our pursuit of winning a championship.
Thank you.
Next question is from Alden Gonzalez. Go ahead.
Hey, Andrew, you were starting to touch on this earlier. I know you didn't end up coming away with any major leaguers, but did this end up being more of a buyer's market than you anticipated going in?
I don't know, because a lot, virtually all the activity were things that we were not involved in. And so I'm not sure I fully wrapped my arms around all of it. I think so much of it gets to the quality that is traded and what the demand is. And so, I almost have to go deal by deal, but there were a lot of teams that were really engaged. And, I think a number of teams that were looking to upgrade in certain areas, and then also a number of teams who weren't that far out of playoff position who were willing to move guys. And so I think that helped provide for, more activity.
the teams that possess sort of the more valuable assets, which a lot of them ultimately ended up being guys who were not traded, was it pretty obvious to you early on that unless they got blown away, it was going to be better for them to just go into the offseason with these guys when maybe the circumstances are a little bit more normalized and to part with them this year or this summer?
I mean, it's a hard thing to gauge. From our standpoint, there were a few guys that, we felt like had a chance to really impact us. Even with that said, there would have been friction on our end that we would have had to figure out. But I think, we talked about this last year. Anytime you're kind of focused on a very small number of players, it obviously decreases the likelihood quite a bit. And as far as like the willingness of teams, I think throughout the last couple of weeks, we've seen teams kind of ebb and flow with that. And so the question remained kind of what would it look like coming into this last weekend? And I think we all kind of got a resolution on that based on the activity.
Next question is from Ken Gurnick. Go ahead, Ken.
Andrew, are you at all concerned about your starters not pitching deeper into games?
No. I mean, I think, it's something from our standpoint that, we were really mindful coming out of summer camp of our pitchers and, as a whole. And, the ramp up and, kind of accelerating into October. And so, I think we've seen some guys get stretched and pushed a little bit more recently. And I imagine that will continue some, but we also have a really good deep pen. And so I think just kind of making sure that everyone is, ramping up at, a more deliberate kind of pace with the start and stop and start again nature of this season. And we'll continue to see, those workloads increase from here.
Next question is from Bill Plunkett. No.
Did that answer what you were asking, Kim? All right.
On behalf of Ken, I'll say probably not.
All right, next question.
Yeah, the two prospects you're getting back from the Blue Jays, can you give us an idea what level we're talking about, who it will be?
It's tough right now. We are definitely getting a guy that we like and feel like will fit in really well with our next crop of prospects that are coming. And then another guy that will come from a bigger list that we'll just have some time to kind of work through.
Low-level minors, or are these guys that'll be, on the fringes?
I think it'll take a little bit of time.
And was this, did you go into this stretch looking to make this move, or was this something that you pivoted to after the other things kind of fell by the wayside?
No, I mean, from our standpoint, this was extremely difficult. Moving Ross, it was a conversation that I was not looking forward to, just in how uncomfortable and uneasy, just because of the respect level. But kind of walk through that exact reasoning of Tony going into the rotation and us being sensitive to kind of what happened in spring training, not to mention in years past. He's absolutely a major league starting pitcher, and a lot of it has been a function of just kind of timing. And from our standpoint, as we look out to next year, we see a strong group that would have made it really difficult to give them any kind of assurances about next year. And that was kind of more of the guiding light for us, coupled with the number of guys we have up here, getting Woody and Bueller back soon, and hopefully Joe and Petey in a little bit, and just the getting in front of that a little bit. But it certainly was not easy at all, and he's been a big part of what we've accomplished here the last 4 years.
Thanks.
Next question's from Eric Steven. Go ahead, Eric.
Andrew, I was wondering, saw a report about the Marlins. Eson Davis, who opted out, is waiting to hear back if he can opt back in, and I didn't realize that was an option. So I have to ask if, just with David Price, is there any expectation that he could still opt back in, or is that even on his radar or your radar at this point?
It's a better question for David. I mean, I've talked to him a decent amount and texted during games. We have not discussed that, but he's definitely very locked in on Dodger baseball, that's for sure.
Sure. And then one other question, I guess, about, the Padres in your division were pretty active. What were your thoughts on their sort of flurry of moves the last 24 hours?
Yeah, they are a very formidable team. We knew and expected that AJ would be aggressive, and look forward to playing them in September, and who knows, maybe in October as well.
Next question is from Dylan Hernandez. Go ahead, Dylan.
Hey, Andrew, I was wondering, you mentioned that if you were going to add somebody, you wanted it to be somebody impactful. Just kind of wondering, your pursuit of that, what you were willing to give up for that type of player, was that influenced at all by the fact that, the opening round is now a 3-game series and, the playoffs are more of a crapshoot now?
It's a really good question. It's certainly a factor. It can't not be. But I think more than that is just there's a lot of unknowns for this year, next year, but also the fact that, we try our hardest in the off season to build up depth and have a really good team in place to avoid July trades as much as possible, or I guess in this year, August trades as much as possible, unless you have an acute need or if you're shooting near the top of the market. And so I think that's going to be, it has been and is going to be kind of our approach to try to avoid paying the 30 to 40% kind of surcharge that typically comes in July, unless it's someone really impactful. But yes, I think October looks different this year than it has in any other year, but our desire to win in October is the exact same. So I don't think it had much of a factor. But of course, it's something that is at least on our mind.
Do you look at something like the coronavirus even? I mean, I know you guys have gone to this point in the season, but I mean, the fact that, for all we know, there might not be a playoffs. Or are you pretty confident?
Yeah,
at this point,
I think at this point I am. I think in the middle of July, early August, I think there were a lot more questions about that. And I can really only speak to it from our perspective, but our guys have done an awesome job of adhering to the protocols and taking it really seriously. And I'm way more confident, and I fully expect that there will be a World Series champion this year. But even beyond this year, I think as we've seen over the last 5-6 months, it's hard to predict even a week out at this point. So, what things look like this offseason, even going into next year, is a little bit of an unknown.
And just one last one, piggybacking off Eric's question about Price. Do you know is he throwing?
I don't know. When he made the decision, we talked about it, and I told him there was no downside in doing that, and he totally agreed. I don't know. We've talked about like our games and our players and some of his observations, but that has not come up.
Thank you.
Next question is from Andy McCullough. Go ahead, Andy.
Hello. Real quick for clarity on the price thing, like, is he able to opt back in?
The way I understand it is you have to seek commissioner approval.
Okay. So just kind of piggybacking off what kind of Dylan was talking about, just like the expanded playoffs. I'm curious, like, do you have concerns about that system continuing beyond this year, given for how it sort of increases variance for the elite sort of teams?
Yeah, I mean, I guess depending on where you are each given year, it can change that answer. My hope and expectation is that we're at or near the very top of the National League each year. And I definitely think it introduces more variance. Now, all things considered, is that a good thing or not? Like, obviously, through my lens, I'm only focused on it from a Los Angeles Dodgers perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and not appreciating or thinking about the bigger picture. So from my standpoint, I think anything that adds more variance is not an ideal thing for the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Mm-hmm. Like when you were with the Rays, right, and you're going up against the two sort of like, juggernauts, like, did you find yourself like fist pumping when they put in the second wild card?
Yeah, it was something that was helpful. Yes.
Thank you.
Have one more from Jorge Castillo. Go ahead.
Andrew, we're talking about the playoffs here, and I'm just wondering, with the expanded rosters in the playoffs, does that make, we're talking about third starter and all that, does that make a bullpen game or a variation of a bullpen game more of a possibility for you guys?
Yeah, I'm not sure yet exactly how we'll deploy our guys, but we feel really confident that we're going to have 13, 14 really talented pitchers. And exactly what the roles are, I think, remains to be seen, and also who we're playing. But, I think the most important thing as we're a month out is just making sure we feel good about the talent and the group as a whole, and we do. And we'll kind of use this month to figure out roles.